Welcome back, everyone. If you've been following along, we are reading through one of my favorite books, The Holy Man by Susan Trott. And every chapter outlines a different pilgrim and a different personality. And I really found this book helpful on my healing journey and along through some of the trials that I've dealt with in my life. So I wanted to start a discussion and really just allow introspection, I guess. And thank you for joining me. We're going to read through chapters 4 and 5. And this is part 2. Chapter 4, Angry Man. One pilgrim, when the door was shut behind him, felt enraged. His blood in a tumult rushed to his brain, breaking blood vessels in the whites of his eyes. He pounded on the door. He shouted at the top of his lungs, "Let me back in. You can't do this to me. Who do you think you are, you fraud, you pipsqueak?" Angrier and angrier he grew. He banged on the door, then went down the steps, stomping on the ground, flailing his arms, looking for something to harm, to break, a rock to throw, flowers to trample. But his red eyes were too blind with rage to see a rock, a stick, a flower. So he roared louder, calling up every vile, vicious, profane, foul word he knew. He had many at his command, for this sort of temper tantrum was not new with him. What was new was being alone. And there was no one to cower fearfully before his wrath, no one to try to placate him, shudder, turn a shamed face, wring hands, and infuriate him further. So his anger ran out, and he began to return to his senses. But an echo was coming back to him from the hills across the valley. His words were coming back at him, fraud, pipsqueak. But the words came not one at a time, as usually the case with echoes. No, when he fell silent, the entire vile, vicious, foul-mouthed, disgusting tirade came back to him word by word. And at the same time his shadows reenacted the insane dance, his berserk leaping, stomping, and flailing. For the first time he saw how he looked and heard how he sounded, and he was ashamed. He was a man of learning, an appreciator of arts, a philanthropist, a leader of men, a distinguished person. He'd once been considered a sensitive person. Now he saw himself in all his brutishness. The only thing missing was the playback, was his face transmorgified to gargoyle in his anger. The shadow could not give back that image, could only portray his body language. But from that he was able to imagine the rest. He was horrified, and he was cured. Exhausted from his seizure, he sat down on a rock and to rest before his descent to the town. The rock was smooth and sun-warmed. It soothed his muscles that were still twitching spasmodically from the fit. Several round gray birds, what the holy man called boulder birds, arranged themselves in a ragged line and struck up a chorus of tweetles and trills, as if for his benefit. He felt happy and grateful. The reason he'd come to see the holy man was about his temper. Chapter 5, The Drunkard. One of the pilgrims was a drunkard. When he arrived, having come 9 miles up from town, the line was a mile long. He hadn't understood the situation, so he certainly hadn't brought enough liquor to last him until he got to see the holy man. He put down the bottle he had brought, which was half gone, and asked the woman ahead of him if she would save his place in line. He'd forgotten something in town. "No, we can't save places for people. It wouldn't be fair. No one would know how far back they were in line if there were a lot of unknown saved places in front of them. When people arrived to fill them, we would start going backwards instead of forward." The drunk looked befuddled. "Do you get it?" she asked. He frowned, considered, and dimly grasped the concept, but it didn't keep him from asking other arrivals if they would save his place in line. He was a charming young man, but no matter how he cajoled and wheedled, no one agreed. The rules of the line were, no saving, except for answering the calls of nature, for which purpose shovels were available 100 yards away to the left or right. No bribing, and of course, not a chance of butting in. He sipped at his bottle, trying to make it last. The woman in front of him kindly said, "At some point, the line will break for the day and people will set up their camps for the night. You can go to the town and be back in time to take your place when the line forms in the morning." "You mean I won't get to see the holy man today?" She laughed. "Don't you see how long the line is?" He looked ahead. "Well, yes, it looks pretty long, but it isn't like a movie theater where you suddenly all go in at 7 or 9 o'clock. He sees us one at a time during part of the day. He has other things to do." He observed the line, which at this time of day was in the inching forward mode. "It looks like maybe I won't get to see him tomorrow either." The woman laughed again. "When the line breaks," he thought, "I will hurry back to town, bring enough liquor for 2 or at the outside 3 days. That would be heavy trekking. Why couldn't I be addicted to something lightweight, some powder or a pill? It's a shame. Life is very hard. Also, we're talking 18 miles here." At 4 o'clock, the line broke and he turned and dashed to the town, arriving at 6:15, making such good time that it would allow for his return before darkness, which was not until 10. He went to the bar, had a few drinks, and decided not to try to go back that night. He'd go up again in the morning. It would mean being farther back in line, but so what? He woke up in the morning, and besides the usual grinding headache, his quadriceps were killing him. He remembered his headlong rush down the mountain. He could hardly walk. He waited for the liquor store to open, bought 3 bottles, and started up the long mountain path at 9:30. It took him 6 hours because it was steep, because of his quads, because he drank on the way, and did a great deal of stumbling and backsliding the last 2 miles. Now he was a lot farther down the line. He could tell because the woman he talked to yesterday was about 100 yards ahead. The line broke a half hour after he arrived, and while everyone set up their camps for the night, he sat down and drank. The next day in line, there was a big space at either side of the drunk because he smelled so terrible. His charm had deserted him. He made mooing, growling, or chicken clucking sounds instead of putting words together. He was a sad case. Too bad for the people near him, but they figured he wouldn't last long. Indeed, in 2 days he was out of booze again, and it dawned upon him that he'd have to make another night run. He was sober enough to realize that if he was ever going to see the holy man, he'd have to go and return in one fell swoop. No lingering in the town tavern, no spending the night at the inn. He'd better load up on the food too. He'd been bumming bits of food, but it wasn't fair to the pilgrims who had to make their provisions last. Luck was with him that the line broke earlier that day. He marked his place with a soiled handkerchief, turned, and hightailed it down the mountain. He realized he would be hard-pressed to be back before dark, and he wasn't. However, the last mile was lit by a slender moon attending the prosperous inlay of stars, and as there hadn't been time for him to drink, he was not in danger of wandering off the path or taking a serious fall. Arriving, he lay down on his new blanket, too tired to drink, and fell into a long, sweet sleep. 2 days later, he was out of liquor again. Because of buying food, clothes, and a blanket, he hadn't had room in his pack for more than 1 bottle, but he'd made it last 2 days and nights. He began to grasp that his visit to the holy man entailed a bit more time than he had first realized. Still, now that he knew he was capable of the run to town and back, he felt no anxiety. What's more, he was beginning to enjoy his companions, even though none of them were fellow drinkers. So when he made his next run, he offered to bring back any small necessities for his new friends. A month later, when the door of the hermitage was opened to him, the holy man saw a muscular man with a joyful light in his clear eyes and a smile as big as a song. "Oh, Holy One," he said, "I am so happy." He fell to his knees and kissed the hem of the small man's wheat-colored robe. Now, said the holy man, "cut that out. Stand up and tell me about it." He told his tale from the beginning in a rush of words, much like his rush down the mountain, because he didn't want to take too much of the holy man's time. And before I knew it, I was going to town every few days getting things for people who needed them, and I wasn't buying booze at all. And I got so I could cover the distance faster and faster. You can't imagine what a quivering mess of jelly I was the first time down the mountain. It's incredible. Now I can go down in an hour and up in 2. It must be a record, don't you think? The holy man smiled. It was almost as fast as he and his monks did it, or to be honest, as fast as he did it up until a year or 2 ago. This is a truly wonderful story. That line is the best thing that ever happened to me in my life. I am delighted for you. What will you do now? Well, I like doing things for people. Do you think I could be of help somewhere? Almost anywhere. By now they were at the back door. Is there anything you'd like to ask me? I originally came to see you because I had so many questions, but now I've forgotten them all. Goodbye then, and good journey. Goodbye, and thank you with all my heart. I didn't do anything, said the holy man. Thank you for taking time with me and reading one of my favorite books. This is chapter 4 and 5, and please just place some comments in below if anything sparked you, or if you'd like to discuss anything, have any questions. Just want to comment. Anyway, I hope you have a wonderful evening and take care. Much love.